It is the final week of league play here at the HGC before playoffs. Here's what we'll see if teams can stick their landings or belly flop down the standings. Because when it comes to the playoffs, every placement counts. I'm Gillyweed, here at the desk with my good friend Dreadnought. Dread, we know for the most part where playoffs are going, but there's still some room for movement in the standings.
Yeah, there is some minor room for changing in the standings, and that being between, like, for instance, Freedom, even Gale Force in rare circumstances. But if every team plays how we expect them to, that being the team above them is going to get the win, and the team below them would end up losing, the only projected change here in week number 5 is going to be between Superstars and B-Step.
Something that we have been talking about for the entirety of part 2. Can Superstars take the spot above B-Step? It's hugely important for Superstars that they're able to do that. They feel like they want to be able to hide strategies while avoiding the very first match of the playoffs. But we also have to talk about Tempo Storm. They are fully qualified now for the mid-season brawl, and Team Naventic and No Tomorrow will soon know who they're going to face in the Crucible, because our playoffs for the Crucible start in the Open Division on Monday. Yeah,
it's going to be really fun to be able to see that unfold. The North American teams that sadly have fallen into that position is going to be whether or not they have the tools to scrape their way out of it and still survive here in HGC North America.
Well, let's see what you guys can look forward to today, as well as whatever matches you might have missed in Europe. Team Liquid is back, baby, or at least it's a start. They have a 3-0 victory over B-Genius, feeling confident going into playoffs, and now that puts more on Team Dignitas to get their own 3-0 victory tomorrow. And Fnatic ending strongly. They also will be joining not only Tempo Storm, but L5, Nomiya, and Combox SEA at the mid-season brawl.
And here for North America, though, we do have Naventic versus Superstars for the very end. But before, it's going to be Team Freedom versus Gale Force eSports.
So Freedom versus Gale Force. Long ago, we had an upset, and it was a huge upset for Team Freedom. They were able to defeat Gale Force eSports 3-2. It was crazy close of a series that they were able to win that. It'll be hard for them to do it again. Gale Force eSports, largely, with a few exceptions, sitting in that nice, comfortable second place position, only losing of one upset to No Tomorrow earlier in part 2.
Yeah, it's going to be the main focus here is Freedom somehow going to be able to play out of their minds the same way we experienced from them in part number 1 and get an upset here against Gale Force eSports. Again, it's going to be a hard tale, but the first time we saw Freedom, the major, is this the team to the dark horse in North America? It was this series against Gale Force eSports that they were able to do it once. Can they do it again? It's going to be harder, I think, this second time than it was in the very first. But either way, they're one of the few teams to even beat Gale Force ever here in North America. So we have a series on our hands.
Right, and Gale Force only needs this victory to be able to claim the number 2 spot, avoiding one of those playoffs matches. So it's also very important for them that they're able to pull this off. Let's hear from Gale Force and Team Freedom how they plan to win this match.
Coming up on our match against Gale Force, I believe that we had a very strong upset playing against them in Phase 1. I think we played our game really well and we came out swinging. So what we're looking to do in Phase 2 is basically kind of adapt on how we play to capitalize on their predictable play style and mostly outdraft their macro play. We believe that they're pretty confident in being able to split push and capitalize on somebody out of position with globals. So we're basically looking to beat Gale Force and head into the playoffs swinging to become the new fan favorite.
My team's feeling really confident going up against Team Freedom. We've been prepping really hard this week. We understand how important this match is. If we drop it, we're gonna have to play another BO5 in playoffs, and that's a big deal. So we're not taking this series lightly, and we're going in pretty confident. Putting in a lot of hours, not only playing the game, since it is a still relatively new patch, but also studying the game, watching what the other regions are doing, watching what Team Freedom did last week. Like, I really want to go to Sweden, and I want to beat a European team, man. Gets my blood boiling.
Two different ideas for Mike Udall here. One is knowing how important this particular match is. And in that regard, maybe they're going to show off some new strategies versus Team Freedom. But on the other hand, he ended talking about the mid-season brawl. He already has his eyes set on being able to be at that competition. So is it going to be that they don't want to show any strategies at all to Team Freedom to make sure that Team 8 can't see anything?
It does hit this weird answer, right, that Gale Force has to be able to display this weekend, and that being whether or not they commit all their resources to ensuring the fact that they remain in that second seed spot, or do they risk it, hide everything, and not let Team 8 have any extra information on them, and, and preserve it, save it to the backside, expect that they can win this series on their own. It is a tough question. My personal belief is that the drafts should be evolving enough to where Gale Force can kind of throw out a lot of their tools now, and because the patch is young, the meta will evolve naturally, so it's okay. But I can totally see that getting in the thought process here in this series.
Well, for Team Freedom, though, Insomnia did mention that this is one of the most predictably strategic times for Gale Force eSports. They have played so many of the same strategies over and over again that it made them look pretty weak to Tempo Storm. So there is a possibility that Team Freedom can capitalize on those things, and that may be a point where Team Freedom can get this upset that they're hoping to get for a second time. We're going to start things off with the Battleground pool for the Heroes Global Championship. We're going to Tomb of the Spider Queen. So already Insomnia is executing on the plan to try to stop as many giant battlegrounds where Gale Force eSports can get a lot done with their globals.
Yeah, heavy focus already when it comes to the map choice here from Team Freedom to remove a main strategy that, again, we heard Insomnia referring to a bit before in his interview, that it's just the global game of Gale Force eSports. It's one that demands respect, and they're giving it that by just going to areas where it doesn't work out so well.
Now, we look at Team Freedom, and we saw them try to change up some of their drafts a little bit versus No Tomorrow. They did bring in a Cassia, but once that didn't work, right back to the old Team Freedom favorites from throughout the drafting, just relying on what they know and how well they can execute what they know to get the job done versus No Tomorrow. Do you think that this is a series that is going to force a lot of change-ups from Team Freedom?
I hope so, just mainly because I think it will benefit them no matter what. Even if they end up struggling in the series with those changes, it's just they're a team that the more that they push themselves, the better it seems like they become. And so, if it starts here in the series, the sooner the better, really, for this team, for their standings, for the playoffs. And so I would like to see them move in towards making adjustments, making changes in their play, because we know out of Part 2, debatably one of the more stubborn teams in North America.
Two bans so far. We have a new Barak ban for Gale Force eSports. Team Freedom banning Gul'dan, which is something that they generally enjoy, but at the same time, it's something that Gale Force eSports has been playing a lot too. Yeah,
there is going to be no major surprises, at least out of those first two bans here. Question more so is going to be, what is the first pick for Gale Force eSports? On Tomb of the Spider Queen, a map that we know the wave player is going to be dominant. They're going to lock in an early Ariel, hinting towards that double support.
If that's the case, then we may see Team Freedom trying to take their own support and then ban as much as they can, but there's so many options. Not sure if that will be a possibility to try to completely stop that, especially now that Gale Force does have the Ariel already, who is a lot of the double support, pivotal support to have.
Yeah, man, this is already really interesting, just because Gale Force is committed to that double support, double warrior, and that double global strategy very early in Part 2, and it seems like when teams were able to identify that, Gale Force suddenly was falling off in terms of quality, but they quickly are going to jump back to that with that Ariel pickup.
Ooh.
Team Freedom, the response is the Malfurion and a very early Cassia.
Malfurion is Team Freedom's most picked hero, and one that, as this team has leveled up, has been incredibly good for collusion. He has nailed a lot of the Twilight Dreams that completely turned fights for the team, so a really nice one for them to have. But Team Freedom getting Cassia is the interesting pick for me. The one time they drafted her versus No Tomorrow did not get a win. Cassia is sitting right at a 50% win rate in North America, but 3 out of the 4 of those wins that she got were superstars. Faye showing a very dominant Cassia.
And she has, you know, kind of had that mixed results, not only just in North America, it's been all over the world since she's been available here at HGC. And I'm still torn. You know, I'm not fully committed in either direction in terms of the quality. I think, again, she is beneficial into heavy melee compositions. Those are situations where she's beneficial. And then obviously the auto attackers with their blind. But the Lucio and the Bala are the rotation now for Gale Force.
Jared, do you think that a Cassia pickup was a little bit of a deny away from Gale Force? We saw them draft her once, and they already had Ariel, who can combo with the blinds of Cassia.
I think that it would be not so much, I guess, yes, but not in the word deny itself, right? When I view a deny, it's like, this is solely the opponents wanted this, their comp needs this, and it's a removal. It is more one of those, generally, it doesn't hurt, you know, Team Freedom to pick that up on their own, but it does take away a potential synergy moving forward. So yeah, I've never come up with a word, I guess, for that, but it is a deny in the sense that Gale Force could want it.
A light deny.
Yeah, a soft deny, something of the like. But Freedom, with the response, is going to be the Arthas ban.
That's a strange one.
It is.
Arthas has not been a big focus now as we've gotten further and further into part 2. The only thing I can think of is maybe we'll see Freedom try to take something else from Equinox's hero pool and just test out. Say, Equinox, what all are you comfortable with playing as the primary warrior? But a lot of other teams have tried that, and it doesn't seem to have phased Equinox or Gale Force too much yet.
Yeah, I agree with you. That ban does seem strange just because Arthas at the start of part 2 kind of fell severely in North America in value. He's not only has he just lowered in value, he's almost seen no play, right? That's kind of the weird variable there. To see this ban for Team Freedom.
Yeah, he started at the number 3 pick in the region at part 2, just like climbing up very fast there after weeks 1 and 2. But then now he's fallen quite a bit. Now he's gone to 4, and it's solely because he's just falling and everyone else is way more important. And speaking of things that are more important to teams, where is Greymane?
I was gonna just bring that up. Greymane still has not been touched in this draft at all. He's been rising in North America. He was missed early on, but he's been gaining the momentum. As Arthas deters, Greymane's been rising. And the fact that we see the attention here from Freedom onto the Arthas, but no one has put any focus onto Greymane, I mean, it is a weaker map for Greymane in the sense that Greymane doesn't have any maps where he's bad, but he does have maps where he doesn't accent the objective too well, this being one, but not enough to make it this late into a draft untouched.
Team Freedom have drafted Varian for a taunt and follow up Sulfurous Smash of Ragnaros, so a lot of synergy between that and Malfurion with his roots. Locking somebody down for Cassia to be able to put out the maximum damage on them, which will be necessary. It takes a while to drop her blind down and then actually go in and feel comfortable with the Fend lunge into a fight.
When looking at these drafts right now, Gale Force with the double support is going to be very teamfight focused. We know that in general that those compositions should lack on the macro game, but it's not like Freedom has committed to that macro game. Ragnaros is going to be the solo, one of the best solos in the game, and he's got some of the most wave clear for their team. Everybody else, Malfurion, kind of lackluster. They've got the Varian who doesn't do too well, and Cassia doesn't provide too much in that department either. So I do fear for Team Freedom in this game, they put Gale Force quickly committed to a we're going to teamfight composition, and at no point did Freedom back out and go, okay, we're going to worry about the macro. They decided we're going to go head-to-head, blow for blow, with this double support composition that Gale Force has created.
And there is the adjustment for Gale Force that we saw from them after initially starting with double support, double warrior on Tomb, finding that it was somewhat difficult to ensure that they could get the win with that. So adjusting and still having double support, but giving up double warrior for a little more reliable damage, especially from Nazeebo as he continues to level up throughout the game. We're looking for this one final pick of Team Freedom. What rounds out their composition?
They need a backliner. They have absolutely 0 ranged heroes on their team so far. A couple have been removed then Gazebo could have been something they would have found a bit more appealing. But again, Gale Force last picking that here. We've got 5 seconds left. Freedom.
I think it'll still be Greymane. Oh no, getting Falstad.
Even more interesting into a double support. I thought if anybody was going to commit to that Falstad here on this map, it would have been Gale Force eSports, just because of all the melees that exist in the hands of Team Freedom. They would struggle into a Gust. Falstad's very, very successful into those type of compositions, but instead, it's going to be Freedom. And my biggest fear out of that is just that there's not enough damage nor use of Gust on this map to be able to deal with that double support. Picking a hero that traditionally doesn't have a heroic that does damage will hinder their ability to teamfight once again into Gale Force's comp.
I'm looking at the Falstad for two different things. Whether it is that there is, when Gale Force eSports wants to fight, if Freedom aren't ready for that, they gust away quickly and it's over. And hopefully for Team Freedom, some of the heroic abilities of Gale Force have been used. But if not that, then they have the possibility of the taunt, roots, grabbing somebody, gusting the rest away. So even though there's a double support present for Gale Force eSports, maybe it's just that Team Freedom can push away that double support and just get a quick pick while they're gone.
And Team Freedom also has the opportunity to move past the front line of Gale Force eSports, dive into the back line. They have a Varian taunt that can dive, Varian, Sulfura Smash follow-up, and all those things. If they get onto the Ariel, because she's the only with any direct saving to that single target burst, it should be possible to get that kind of execution, dive past the backline. It is going to be hard, and it relies on, Ariel being very much out of position, and that's the biggest fear for me here with Freedom's draft.
That Twilight Dream could be instrumental to Gale Force too. If Collusion makes sure to hit both of the supports with Twilight Dream, if they're grouped up, that could be huge. We are ready for game 1, so let's head into Tomb of the Spider Queen.
Into Tomb of the Spider Queen, and in the blue is going to be Team Freedom. Collusion is going to be on Malfurion. Varian played by Zugrug. Insomnia is going to be on Ragnaros. Dainty going to fill out the Cassia. And last year we've got Nasmus on the Falstad.
And for Gale Force eSports, looking for a victory so that they can claim the #2 spot in the region. Akaface playing Lucio, Equinox playing Johanna, Michael Udall playing Nazebo, Crowan once again the second support to play Ariel, and finally Fan playing Vala.
So we'll find out here what the lane matchup is going to be for these teams. Gale Force has a bit of wave clear on their side. Freedom, not too much, especially knowing that we're committing to a seasoned marksman Falstad for Nasmus.
Important to note for you guys here at home, charge strikes, this is still the 25% damage bonus. Has not seen the latest nerf that has come in yet here at HGC. We are still playing on the Genji patch. With a lot of Genji play in other regions, a lot in both Europe and in Korea. Can't wait to see if we have some Genji play here today in North America.
Yeah, Cassia's had a bit of mixed results, but so has Genji. It's been interesting to see what we've seen so far with him, but I expect at least one game in North America to get the Genji coming out. But sadly, not here for Gale Force versus Freedom, as Gale Force still controlling the waves here up into the 4-man. Nazebo holding his own up on bottom. And because of that, Freedom has actually adjusted their laning phase to send Ragnaros to complement that 4-man, and Falstad's going to match it. So not letting the lane matchup of the melee being Ragnaros into Nazebo, who is one of the few ranged that can actually fill that solo role, not willing to risk that. Send Ragnaros into the 4, making them have better wave clear there, and then a better 1v1 matchup. I like this change for Freedom.
But they have to make sure that Insomnia can continue to stack. That's the problem. Michael Udall in trouble, catches himself inside of the zombie while Zugrug trying to get the kill, and he will get it. But a counter kill for Gale Force.
Not enough heals coming out from Collusion, and so that is going to be a 1-for-1 trade. Not enough time to retreat there, and one more falls. Insomnia taking a lot of damage. One flashlight out of GFE, and another pick. 3-for-1 in this early game skirmish.
So what I was mentioning before is when you rotate in Ragnaros to hang out with the 4-man, everyone has to be in sync about trying to make sure that he can get his stacks on Sulfurous Hungers. He's about halfway done with those now, so it shouldn't be too much longer, hopefully. But the big problem is losing so many members early on for Freedom has given Gale Force eSports the edge.
It's given them the edge not only in the experience department, Gilly, but the fact that it is benefiting them in gems as well. That is so huge here on Tomb of the Spider Queen. Gale Force is feeling comfortable, even with the lane matchup mix-up, really, an innovation that Freedom has kind of made happen here in this game.
Freedom will look to start gaining back whatever control they can, but 32 gems turned in almost certainly means that Gale Force will get the first turn in phase, unless
they throw out spells and nothing happens. I thought for a moment, you know, Freedom would be able to get that pick off there. But good movement speed coming out from Aka. The double support holding true, keeping teams up.
Yeah, there's no hugely hard CC yet, unless a good root can land like that, but it is Johanna. Danescape jives in for a fend, a little extra damage. But until they get taunt, there's no ensure of a lockdown for as long. You're relying a lot on roots, on the slow of charge. Maybe Equinox can go down here, still has Iron Skin, making sure that you can step away from the roots and have that extra shielding to stay alive.
Nobody going down yet. There's not too much kill potential when looking at the four-man for both of these teams. Gale Force is more committed to overall team fighting than it is skirmishing in the lanes, right? There's a very big difference between team fighting and how the laning matchup is going to work out. 8 gems turned in for Team Freedom, but that comes down to just a lot of it is how much early CC and damage you have versus how do you look like when your heroics are online, right? And Gale Force is not a skirmishing team, but they are a team fighting composition. And if they get those web weavers, win the race here to 10, Freedom is going to have a lot of tough questions in this game.
Dread, do you think there's any chance of having Resurrect Ariel since there is a double support comp for Gale Force?
We've talked about Resurrect being implemented into the game now and how... Okay, so is it possible? Yes. Is it the right choice? I'm gonna say no, but that's purely based on the fact that I don't totally understand the value of Resurrect. Resurrect is insanely powerful. Obviously, you can bring somebody back from the dead, but the fact that you're banking on someone dying, you're banking on losing any talent, especially a heroic, you have to take with the incentive that you are going to be on the back foot is generally a poor talent to take. And that is why I would say, in general, no. But it is possible because, again, bringing one person back is so undervalued. I think it's a really underestimated mechanic that is now implemented with that 0.5-second channel time.
Yeah, there's no melee assassin of sorts that would be in a riskier position. The one thing I can think of is Fan with this double support is probably going to play more so like a melee assassin on Vala because you have that luxury when you have such a good support system set up. So potentially for Fan, maybe, but otherwise I still agree with you, especially with the hard lockdown and gust composition that Freedom has. I think Gale Force are going to really want to have Aegis along with Sound Barrier.
I think that is the biggest argument. I mean, beyond the fact we're yet to see the Resurrect, right? But just purely on a theory crafting front, that is the best argument for why we will not see Resurrect in this game. Is again, the Sulfura Smash, the variant taunt, it limits, it makes it to where Ariel is the only really vulnerable target to that kind of CC as long as she's there to get an Aegis onto someone else.
Plus, it again makes it harder for Collusion to stop both of the support players with a Twilight Dream. Insomnia is coming in, Red Web Weavers are descending, and Gale Force stays alive for that push. They are rounding out on their heroic abilities, and with the right amount of towers, they'll get there before Team Freedom.
Gale Force with the Web Weavers look like they are going to collect here into the mid lane, keeping Nazeebo up on bottom, making sure to get some extra soak. Members of Freedom sending Ragnaros towards mid. Is this the Molten Core? It is in fact going to be. Where does Gale Force move now that they see this? Top lane's going to be the focus.
Yeah, Nazeebo's known for his ability to push along with his Web Weavers, so they're going to try to draw away more resources stopping him while protecting the Web Weaver in the top lane too. Condemn comes in, some damage thrown out too. Nasmus has to go back, but should be able to fly back in the bottom lane. Good defense so far for Team Freedom. Haven't lost any towers here in the top. The mid defended by Ragnaros. Falstad now flying bot to deal with Nazeebo.
Yeah, this is overall a really good defense coming out from Freedom, but I do want to note that part of that I think is compositional and where the power spike hits, is the fact that Gale Force has a double support, which not only means that they lack macro, they lack siege until they have their heroics online and they can be a team fight composition. Then they get siege and byproduct to them actually team fighting, right? You can bait around a team fight and be like, well, you either fight us now or we're going to take your fort for free. And this is where,
Valkyrie.
Nice Aegis coming out there, but a huge amount of damage.
Twilight Dream obliterates two from Gale Force eSports in an instant. Team Freedom continuing to put the pressure on. They've got Nasmus in the bot and the back doing what he can. Gust stopped from Equinox with Iron Skin, but still the taunt is there. Equinox should go down here. 3 kills for Freedom.
3 kills for Not, and that is not looking good for Gale Force, mainly because, again, they have a team fight-oriented composition. When their composition should be at its best, it just lost 3-0 into a team fight. That is not good. The fact that they were successful in the early game, but now struggling in that area is something they have got to get figured out here. Because otherwise, Freedom, that's the main selling point of a double support composition.
Yeah, forcing the Aegis with Valkyrie too was a nice move from Cassia player. Speaking of Cassia too, different talent choice at level 7. This is I think this is War Traveler. Yeah, it's War Traveler. So instead of having Surge of Light to do some extra area damage, Cassia now is going to get more movement speed. So a little bit better of a setup and escape as well from the team fight of Gale Force. So sacrificing somewhat in the damage to do so, but they do have a lot of damage potential. We saw it, even Collusion can put out a ton of damage if he's in the right spot.
Yeah, and this net a Web Weaver phase for Team Freedom. What are they going to be able to achieve with this? Again, defensively, Gale Force doesn't have necessarily the best composition. It's only when they're grouped all together as a 5-man unit defending around those turn-ins or around Web Weavers that they should be able to thrive, whereas the composition that of Freedom is going to be a bit better in this department. They can siege all right. Again, a lot of melees, not what you traditionally are going to want in any composition when trying to get those forts, but they manage to get at least 2 front walls, and they still have a lot of gems to turn in later.
They do, and they can set up immediately to turn in once the Web Weaver clutches open, which is now, because they have a slight window of having a 13 advantage. It's not the biggest of talent tier advantage, so Gale Force still feels like they can try to stop, but not if they lose here. Crystal Aegis saves Ariel from a lot. The Twilight Dream gets stopped from Condemned too. That was massive for Equinox.
Oh, that zombie wall! Oh, baby, trapping everybody in.
Including his teammate.
And that was enough to get at least 1 kill here. The chase is going to be real. Zugrug and friends make it out.
So no turn-in yet to be gained. The double support holding true, going even 1-1 in that last skirmish, but a turn-in available here for GFE.
So Team Freedom should now know that every time Valkyrie comes down, that's when Aegis will be used. Save Sulfuris Smash until after that, because we've seen both drop down and both get denied from that. We're going to take another look at this. Here is where it starts. Sulfuris Smash and Valkyrie force out the Aegis. Stopping Twilight Dream was everything for Equinox, but then Mike Udall
with a 3-man zombie wall trapping people in, setting everybody up here. Very dirty. Rarely do you see, such an impactful zombie wall. It's strange because it is one of the most impactful default kit spells in the game, but it's very rare just because the range at which it has, mixed with so many weird niche in and outs of counters. Well, if you have a Lucio, he can knock it back versus you can just kill it. But
you can move the zombies around.
One of the few moments there where we see a very high impact zombie wall to match that of even a Tassadar Force wall.
Yeah, usually you see it used in that sort of situation to be able to soak up ammo, do some more damage to structures. Gale Force eSports with this Web Weaver phase have claimed the first fort of game number 1 against Team Freedom. But Team Freedom is holding on. They are holding their own, and that's exactly what we wanted to see in this rematch of the upset. Really, the upset of part 1.
They are holding their own, and they're also holding 103 of those sweet little gems, and that is something they need to be able to get turned in. A good deny attempt once again from Gale Force as they sniff. This top turn-in was the focus for Freedom. Falstad has been still soaking on bottom, doing his thing down here with Mike Udall, which Mike has promptly just kind of dominated that matchup. No surprise there, considering Nazeebo, one of the best, again, ranged solos.
I'm wondering if Freedom, if they can't get this turn in, which they should not be able to from Gale Force, and they can't get a pick, which again, it's a team fight composition for Gale Force, maybe they go and take some mercenary camps, and they are starting to do that. Falstad in the bottom. Sans Wingman still able to get the Giant, so that will push back Nazeebo and might offer a possibility of turning in the bottom lane. They could maybe even look at their bruisers in mid. But importantly, they're starting to get closer to 16, and that might just be the window they need. So with this, Fan is gone.
One kill is all it takes here. A lot of the gems. Oh man, if Equinox gets caught out here in mid, that could spell terror for Gale Force. There's the Blessed Shield, the Iron Skin, but the Roots coming out from Collusion, priming them for a pick. 16 talent tier, and now what is going to be a secondary Webweaver phase.
Dread, it is so insane to think back to the start of part 1 and where Freedom was at, and especially where Collusion was at, to where he is now with Malfurion.
Yeah, being a guy who is role swapped from a different role and then trying to learn what it means to be a support, to be, you know, that guy keeping your team alive. I often talked about early on was that his lack of playmaking, but he was good at healing. But we've already seen, even in this series, that he's not afraid to drop a solo Twilight Dream early in a fight if he realizes that's the win condition. And suddenly, you know, Collusion has transformed himself not from a heal bot any longer, but to a playmaking support for his team. And a large reason why they are holding their own at the beginning of this series.
Yeah, that's just something I adore about the HGC, is getting to see those improvements week to week from teams and from players like Collusion. Now Team Freedom a full level ahead of Gale Force eSports and having a very productive Webweaver phase, taking out all of Gale Force's front structures.
Yeah, they have got a lot going on for them with this top Webweaver. Naz is just cleaning up that on bottom. There goes the first taunt. Iron Skin going to be used, walking right through the roots. A strafe drop by Fan. Just a poke off, but Blessed Shield comes out. They're going to try and get this Force with Falstad still up on bottom. There's the Molten Core. Deters Gale Force from going any farther forward. Taunt up in 2 seconds. There it is. But the Aegis is going to be forced.
Gust though, and afterward Valkyrie, Johanna dropped again. Team Freedom using all of those abilities so perfectly well after Aegis and their Molten Core to ensure a kill as they walk away from Gale Force's base. And they have more gems. They could turn in again.
That's what happens when you don't get picked off. Freedom has been waiting for this moment, and thankfully now it is literally paying off. The fact that they have been able to store those gems for so long while Gale Force, you know, they let them do their thing, but they never let them gain control. They never got those staggered picks when one person had 30 gems and the other had 30. Nobody went down, and Gale Force on the back foot of this game, even without a macro composition, Team Freedom is winning these fights into the double support that we had heard so many rumors about, that this would be the meta, the only meta, and now not only has it not popped up very often in North America, first case of it, it's losing.
It's not working out very well for Gale Force, but they still have one more opportunity at least to get a fight before Team Freedom gets 20. Gale Force needs to use that opportunity because they are running out of structures. They're running out of time. Once Freedom gets 20, there will be a boss possibility for them. And with that top Webweaver bringing down the top keep so much because Freedom have kept Gale Force here in the mid, that may just be game.
It may. They have got the map, I mean, just waiting to be destroyed and taken over. And with that 20 talent tier, the core is going to be such a delicious prize here. 42 gems available for Team Freedom, 46 for that of Gale Force, and a mere 25% of a level for Gale Force to try and force before Freedom hits that huge 20 spike.
Freedom are going to turn in and get rid of all of their gems. Gale Force checking the boss, making sure that that's not the way that Team Freedom wins this game. So far it wasn't, and now with the gems in, Gale Force can see and know exactly where Freedom was. Nazmus is going to make a play for Bruisers, try to force some positioning of Gale Force, make them defend there so Freedom can see them in another lane and get the boss. They're clearing out the minions in top, maintaining vision over it. 20 hits, immediate rotation to this boss.
They are going to get this started. Gale Force sets their focus now to get the turn in onto bottom. They know this boss is being taken, but they forfeit it, accepting that they cannot take that 20 fight. So they're going to have to do it instead with the boss wailing down through the top. And with 20 disadvantage, that top keep almost already dead. This very much could be it for Gale Force eSports. unless they somehow get a pick on a dive onto the backline. But their comp is not made for that. It's for the sustained fight, for the defensive fight. And I sadly do not think they have enough time, at least not this time.
They are so far away from 20 that it will take a miracle to make sure that they cannot lose the game right here. Here comes Nazmus with the fly. They've found Equinox, taunt hits, look for the Crystal Aegis. This time Sound Barrier used first. It's the first line of defense. Boss at halfway. This is looking pretty good at defending. Ragnaros goes into Molten Core though, and the damage continues. Team Freedom steps forward. They want the core, they want the game.
The gust off the core, the shielding is going to be depleted quickly. Twilight Dream is going to be used there. The 80% onto the core ice block. I don't think they've got it. The Blessed Shield, 50%. The core is falling. The barrel roll over the wall, 30%, 20%. And no, that is now 4 members gone for Team Freedom. Gale Force still in this game. And with the Web Weaver primed on bottom, 50 seconds before anybody on Freedom is going to res from the dead other than a solo Ragnaros, suddenly Gale Force can turn this game.
Gale Force did so much damage to that boss, and it meant so much that they were able to do that. The Web Weaver starting to try to hit core, or the keep for Team Freedom. Ragnaros, though, heading back in the top lane. He's going to try to base raise this with 21% left. Can Insomnia do it?
I don't know if he can, but we'll see as he's going to try and get through the shields. Nazebo's back. Mike Udall, the solo defender, I don't think he can do this on his own. They need somebody else. 19. Oh, that Garg. 17. It doesn't look like it's going to be it because the other side quickly falling. This is going to be it. GG going over to Gale Force eSports, taking a lead over Freedom.
It was Freedom's game to lose.
It was Freedom's game to lose, and they in fact did that. The boss call up on top, it wasn't 100% game. I mean, obviously we didn't experience the very end there, but the fact that it was I could understand the call and why they committed the way they did, but it hit a point once everybody res where it was very quickly, this is not going to happen, and they just kept going. I can respect both sides. I really can. It's just sad to see Freedom, have that much control, that much restraint, especially over the early game, and then it all kind of break, 20 minutes into the match.
And that very well could be the type of loss for Freedom that is demoralizing. But we know Freedom. We know they have a great mindset when it comes to the game. Being able to have a good atmosphere, understand the mistakes that they made, and carry on through the rest of the series. So we know that they will be trying to do that with each other. But it's a rough loss to have, especially because it is Gale Force, and Freedom looked so good throughout that game.
And the other thing to consider, why this weight, the loss here might weigh more than it traditionally would, is just the fact that Gale Force was on a map where their global strategy, where half their strategies that they're known to play are just not a viable option. Much like I talk about when Teammate, for instance, when you're playing against them, when half of their strategies are only viable on large maps, always focus on those smaller ones. So to win on a small map is pretty much just that much more important for Gale Force. Yeah.
Well, that closes out Game 1. We are heading to a break, and when we come back, Game 2. Stick with us.